Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ushanka Show, the place where you can always learn something new about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergei Sputnikov, but if it sounds too Soviet for you, you can call me John Wayne Cheeseburger. Okay, so I received a question from Klein Deer. Sergei, I know it's not about the picture, but I wanted to try and get a hold of you somehow. I was mowing my lawn last night, and I randomly thought I've never really seen a Soviet lawnmower. What did they look like? Who could own one, and so on. So in today's video, we're going to talk about Soviet lawnmowers and generally the culture of maintaining your grass and lawn in the Soviet Union. And I need to break up the story in two pieces, so we're going to talk separately about lawns in the cities and the lawns out in the country, in the villages. Surprisingly, I have a photo of the Soviet-era lawnmower. As you see on this photo, this is my late father-in-law, Gary, who went to Ukraine with my wife and my daughter, Sasha, back in 2001. And he is like a real American. He'll always love to mow grass and always liked loud things that had engines. And he took a picture with this lawnmower that he saw in our neighborhood in Kiev, Ukraine. And I apologize for the poor quality of the photo because it was taken with the single-use Fuji camera. Remember those plastic cameras that used to be sold back in the 80s and 90s. That was his favorite type of camera. And I must say that my father-in-law was very lucky to stumble upon this type of push mower because for some reason, and I can't tell you why, most people were using weed whackers. And even now in modern days, Russia and Ukraine, lawn maintenance in the cities usually is being done with this professional quality dual handle weed whacker, which we call motokasa or benzokasa. Okay, so it looks like it's time to do a lesson of Russian language. Урок русского языка. Коса, коса, scythe. I hate this word. I always forget how to pronounce it in English, but in Russian it's pretty easy. Коса. And you need to be careful with коса because it also means that large single braid that girls wear sometimes. Коса. Braid. Motokasa. Motokasa. So that's a scythe with the little engine, with a little motor. So that's your weed whacker. Motokasa. Benzokasa. Benzokasa. So that's the scythe that runs on benzene, runs on gasoline. So that's your gas weed whacker. Benzokasa. Okay, so let's go back to the topic of Soviet lawnmowers. So as I mentioned earlier, I believe my late father-in-law was lucky to stumble upon the Soviet-era push mower, though it's already 2001, because back in my days, I only saw pretty much weed whackers, and I don't recall ever seeing actual lawnmowers. And I never thought about it, but now I started wondering why would people prefer using weed whackers over lawnmowers, and the answer is so simple that I was laughing. Because they mowed grass so seldom during the season, during the summer. You need lawnmower when you mow the lawn. You need weed whacker when you whack the weeds. And that's what most Soviet lawns in the cities, there were weeds, overgrown weeds, which normal push mower would have hard time to deal with. When I was doing research for this topic, I discovered that still in many cities in Russia and Ukraine, they do seasonal mowing. So people will show up mid-June, early July, and then again late August, early September, and they start mowing lawns, almost like starting whacking the weeds. So having a tall grass in the parks, on the sidewalks, which is the normal occurrence, it was the normal summer look. And I think this is why when I came to America for the very first time back in the summer of 1995, I couldn't understand why everything looked so almost like unreal, too pretty. And that's because Americans mow grass all the time and they keep it neat and manicured. And it's only after I stayed in America in 1999 when I got married, and then I went back to Ukraine only 4 years later in 2004. And that's when I realized, my goodness, why grass looks so ugly around here? It's just not well maintained. You know, there's dry spots, tall grass, dead grass. People walk across the grass, and it's first time ever I realized how actually ugly areas look in the capital of Ukraine. And before that, it never bothered me. I never even noticed that. And I believe right now in downtown Kiev, where it's a tourist area, I believe they maintain grass way better. They water it, they mow it more often. But on the outskirts, like the area where my parents live, it still looks pretty rough, and they only apply seasonal mowing, so they will do it only 2-3 times during the summer, and that's it. Okay, and now let's talk about villages and lawn mowing there. So in the villages, no one cut the grass to make area look pretty. People cut the grass because they needed grass to feed their animals, chickens, rabbits, especially cows or goats. So they'll be pretty much, you see people walking around the street and they'll find a good grass, good spots, and they'll cut it and take it home. So no one was actually mowing grass. And of course, if people had a cow, and most collective farm workers had to have the cow because you couldn't buy milk in a store, you have to get your own. So now harvesting hay was a huge job and important task because you need to feed your cow through the winter, and there is nothing else to eat for the cow except hay. There was no, like animal feed for sale available, so this is what cows lived on all through the winter, on hay. So those small plots of land that were next to the houses of collective farm workers, it was 0.4 hectare, not much. It was pretty much all used to grow potatoes, some other vegetables and fruits. They had some apple trees, and then collective farm would allow people to utilize their land to use it for hay harvesting. So everyone knew which areas was assigned to the person or to the family, and that's where they'll go in June and cut the grass, let it dry, turn it to hay, and then bring back home. And opposite of to the lawn mowing, when you wait till grass is dry to mow it down, you actually prefer to cut hay, to cut the grass when it's wet. So the best is to start early morning when it's plenty of dew. It's the best way to cut grass. It's not hot as well, so people usually will start like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and they start cutting grass for hay. And then, of course, you have to come back and turn the hay around so it dries everywhere. Then you gather it together in stog. It's like the tall pile of hay, and it stores there. Then you bring it in your barn later towards the fall. And, of course, during the summer, the cattle, so people's cattle and collective farm cattle, they'll be grazing in the meadows and the fields. So they will keep the grass neatly mowed, just natural way. And I never realized how much grass our cows were consuming, because when I went back to the village, when like a lot of places died out and was empty street when our house used to be, and there were no more cows, I was shocked how tall grass was in the meadows towards the river, because during my childhood, that grass was really, really short, because every day cows were going through it and eating up grass. So I want to say, back in the Soviet days, villages look neater lawn-wise because they constantly were cutting grass for hay and letting cows or goats eating the rest of the grass, so everything was short. While in the cities, they had no animals, so the grass will be tall and ugly. And speaking of hay, I recall there was a story that during the period of the Great Times, when they brought a lot of peasants into the army and tried to teach them how to march, the officers realized that many peasants had no idea about left leg and right leg. So when they teach them to march, they had no idea how to march, because you tell them left, and they don't understand what you're talking about. So the officer found a really interesting solution. They realized that peasants know what is hay and what is straw. So hay is siena and straw is saloma. So they made them tie to one leg a little bit of straw and to another leg a little bit of hay, and that's how they told them to march. Siena, saloma, straw, hay. And that's how the peasants learned how to march. And now my personal story. So growing up in a large city and growing up in a country that had no lawn maintaining culture, I had a hard time to get used to mowing grass on a regular basis here in Michigan, and it was driving my late father-in-law nuts, because every time he will come to visit us, he'll be like, "Why not mowing your grass? I gave you a lawnmower." And I look outside, it's not tall enough yet. Why to bother? It should be like maybe, knee high. So they will get angry, go outside and start mowing my grass for me. So it took me about, 5 years till I started noticing that, okay, it's getting kind of shaggy. I better mow the grass. Now, of course, I mow more often than I used to. I still let dandelions grow. I don't mind them. but it definitely took me a long time to get Americanized and start mowing grass like Americans do. Okay, my friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can always support my work with your likes, with your comments. You can click on that heart with a $sign to give me a tip. And you can also buy my books, American Diaries 1995 and 1996. Thanks so much for watching Ushanka Show, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.